Hey guys, I just want to let you know that I am now a certified spiritual life coach. If you resonate with the topics and lessons that my guests and I discuss on my podcast, and you feel that you could use some empowerment and direction in your journey of becoming who you truly are, consider booking a free discovery call with me on my website at kindlemccullough.com. And now on to the episode. Hey guys, I'm excited today. I have my friend Reuben Langden back on the podcast. I had him a while back, maybe like a year ago or something, talking about channeling and all the channelers he's interviewed. He had the top show on Gaia for a while, Gaia TV on channeling, and now he has his own community and holds space for other people to share their gifts and grow and learn as well, and his own research as well. So I love what he does and the space he holds for people. And it's always interesting what's going on in the spiritual world. And I'd love to get his thoughts. So thanks, Reuben, for coming back on.
Thanks for having me. Yep. Good to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about ETs, of course, and talk about open contact and the future, and maybe some different spiritual things like portals and 5D and time and stuff like that. So yeah, It's been a while since I've had one of these more spiritual woo-woo podcasts. And so, I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Excellent. Me too. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of want to start going backwards in history a little bit. It was a couple months ago, I read Dolores Cannon's book. I'm going blank, but it was about the beginning of Earth and kind of how ETs seeded humanity. Do you know this concept, and do you have like an idea of like what that means to you and what that looked like?
Yeah, it's a big theme in my research and in my understanding of things. So. For sure. Big fan of Dolores Cannon.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of describe, because I still feel like even after reading the book, it's still kind of hard for my mind to grasp. So I'm just interested in your kind of definition of what seeding would look like and what happened there.
Well, there's a lot of different sort of theories and Dolores with her work, with the regression work that she's done. There's a general consensus that kind of comes through a lot of the channeling work, Dolores's work with the QHHT regressions, and so I'll talk in sort of general, not so specific. So depending on the person that's channeling and depending on the being and all that, the specifics tend to get a little wonky. But the general the general idea is that humanity or Earth was seeded by different extraterrestrial races. The most popular, common one is Lyra, the Lyrans, and there's been many over time, but I think that's going back to the beginning, so-called the beginning of humanity. Was the Lyran, when it comes to the ET story, right? I'm sure on Earth already evolving hominids going through their evolutionary path, and it was the Lyran species that came and interjected their DNA, and then later you have the Anunnaki story, and it goes from there. But going prior to the Anunnaki storyline is the Lyran storyline of coming here, not doing genetic manipulation, but literally some of the stories that I've heard is that they almost kind of crashed, or their planet was destroyed, and then that it came here to as a refuge in a sense, and then just through natural connections with the already existing hominids, they mated and sort of hybridized through their just being, and then over time the human species grew to what it is. But along the way, there's been many different other ET storylines that have come in and interjected into the human story. And I'm very generalizing here, so don't.
Sure. I know it's so complex; it's hard to.
Yeah,
and yeah, the details might vary.
that's
but right. And as far as I understand it, that's just like a natural thing that happens around the universe. That higher dimensional, more progressed races, species might help new planets and species develop over time and kind of look over them. And that's just, I guess, their role. Was that?
Yeah. And there's a lot. So a lot of it's talked about that a lot of life here has been not just the human population, but other insects, birds, mammals, of different breeds have been inserted here from all over the galaxy to as a sort of like a terrarium or a sort of an experiment to see how life can coexist and co-create and grow together. So, it's a fascinating storyline, and it sort of makes sense if you look at it from just a kind of a typical biological
evolutionary
point. Yeah, we have. I mean,
right.
Earth is so diverse, and with its life, and when we put our telescopes on other planets, we get gas clouds or the Mars deserts. We're not seeing the numerous amounts of life that we have here. So it does sort of make sense that there could have been a little help from other civilizations bringing life here to sort of and let it go wild. Or it could all be natural, but it just seems, with the mass diversity that we have here, that we might have had a little help.
Right. Yeah, I like this kind of explanation. It makes the most sense to me in comparison to kind of like the Christian or straight Darwin evolution kind of perspective. And either God created it and that's the way it's been, and it's just been like this from the beginning, or B, evolution, just naturally we developed over time. But I think we do see evolution in nature, but I think that what like Christians argue is we don't see the extreme evolution of like different the human species, how it's developed, and the different I forget, like hominids or whatever that development. We don't see that today, and so it makes sense to me that other species, ETs, kind of came in and helped make those jumps that evolution, with just nature on its own, could not really actually make those jumps. So it seems to fill in the gaps either way.
Yeah. It's that's what I love about this whole sort of ET idea is we have, through scientific discoveries and research, that storyline of human evolution, but there are gaps, and it's convenient to put these ET storylines in there because they do fit like a glove. And then you also, you have the Ancient Aliens, which spans how many seasons? So
right.
they definitely worked that storyline in every angle you could possibly think of.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, it seems like there was a time in our past where ETs were very prevalent. Like they were on Earth, they were seen, they were interacting with humanity. But at some point, that shut off, or that terminated, or became maybe a little more hidden. Do you know what happened or why?
So this is a storyline that I'm deeply fascinated with and explore, and I've even produced an event in Mount Shasta last year, and we're going to do it again this year, called the Lemurian Life Expo, where we take this idea of Lemuria. Have you heard of that?
Yes, yeah, it's kind of like Atlantis, Well, I guess no, it wasn't Atlantis. That's a different one, but it's similar theme.
Similar idea.
Yeah.
Idea. Yeah. So like Atlantis, there is tales and in religious context, cultural context from the Maori to a lot of the Polynesian island belief system and the Hawaiians. They actually the word they used was Mu, the continent or island of Mu, which is this mass island. You can look at old maps, even sometimes have it, and within the Pacific that have had a thriving civilization, and at some point it was destroyed, sunk, or the waters rose, which then also conclude with a lot of the deluge stories of Noah's Ark and whatnot.
Right, the flood.
The flood, the Great Flood, and many cultures have this in their history. The Hopi, Zuni, many North American, Central, South American cultures, even here in Japan, depending on who you talk to, there's some stories and ideas of that in some of their older history books. So there does seem to be some sort of enough evidence that points to a civilization at some point, like Atlantis, but it's through the channeling work I've uncovered that it was much older, and this Lemuria civilization was probably what the Lyrans seeded. And at that point, there's. Are you familiar with the precession of the equinox?
I've heard that. I don't remember what that means.
It's the 26,000-year cycle wobble that the Earth does like this. Graham Hancock and Carlson talk about this. And it seems every 13,000 years and every 26,000 years, there's these categories and shifts within the Earth's magnetic field. Seems
the North Pole shifting dramatically, causing a lot of natural disasters and upheaval. Exactly,
which with a weakened magnetic field, it allows sun energy, X flares and whatnot can affect the Earth in a much more extreme way. Meteors and other comets and things can come in because the shields are down, so to say, and that shields are down effect can there's some evidence pointing to the scientific evidence, but it's also talked about in the channel material, is that we're getting genetic upgrades from the sun. The sun can the information and through these extreme sun activity with a weakened field can create an enhanced evolutionary effect on our entire planet, not just humanity itself, but it's everything here on Earth is getting blasted by these sun rays, and at the same time, we're getting sort of evolutionary pushed forward in one way, but then at the same time, because the shields are down, we're susceptible to cataclysms and other things as well. So, but these great shifts, so let's just call them shifts up and down. And the Lemurian shift down, so what's talked about a lot is way back then, we're talking hundreds of thousands of years ago, if not millions, in prior cycles, 26,000. So thinking 26,000-year time cycles. And the energy on the planet was very enlightened or heightened. There was more connectivity. The Lemurian communities were very psychically connected to the Earth, telepathically talking to animals and other creatures at the time. And then during this fall, which wasn't overnight, it took time, but probably, we can say 26,000 years or even further back, then the so-called fall happened, where the density. Have we talked about the terms density and
Yes.
which is a level of consciousness that
Mm-hmm.
correlates with like chakras and energy centers. So the density of the planet, the consciousness of the planet, started to fall, started to become very heavy, very dense,
Mm-hmm.
and and during that time, humanity forgot and lost a lot of their connections to other aspects of the earth, and they forgot their history. They forgot where they came from. They forgot even basic technologies that crystalline technologies. Some said that like Atlantis or Lemuria thrived with. Perhaps they had technologies that could even like craft that floated in the sky and these types. So the idea is that during these cycles, we sort of fell in consciousness, and then we go down, and then we go up, and we're at this point now where humanity this is why you hear about the age of the Aquarius and how we're moving to the cycle of Aquarius, because it's the 12 signs of the zodiac. If you look at the precession, it rotates and points towards the different cycles, 12 signs, and we were in Pisces, the birth of Christ, and that's why go with the Pisces and the fish and everything else. And now we're moving into Aquarius, so we're moving out. We're sort of in that in between period. It's not such a cut and dry line where it's like, okay, now you're in Aquarius. It's like, no, we're moving into Aquarius, and it'll probably be another couple hundred years or so until we're fully in the Aquarius energy. But it's said through the channeling and through all the research that we are moving back into this more integrated, connected way of life. And the density of the planet is again going back. So we kind of fell down, and now we're coming back into this higher state of being. We're remembering our roots. We're having conversations like this, and a lot, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the turmoil that's happening in the earth right now. And this is an alternative story to sort of like biblical Armageddon, these types of things, where yes, it is the end of the old way and the beginning of a new, more integrated way of connectivity and life on the planet, where these old ways, we have to release them. We have to sort of shed them. And that can be very traumatic, because so many people love their trauma, right? They love the old storylines. They love to hang on to the doom and gloom scenarios, and they love being disconnected from each other. So they perpetuate and create more of that until eventually they sort of make themselves irrelevant in the new earth, which is more about connectivity and unity and oneness. So that's the big story picture of sort of this idea of Lemuria in old times.
Right. Okay. So I just want to get this straight. So what you're saying is that during these times, every 26,000 years, with the magnetic pole shift and open kind of electromagnetic field being open and the sun rays coming in, it causes a downward
it's actually level. A choice. It could be one or the other, actually.
Okay.
And typically it goes in waves. If you think of like so it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up. There's, I think you probably know better than me, in biblical scriptures, there's talks of the fall happening over more than once, maybe, 5 times, maybe 5 times. I don't know the exact number, but it can go either way. And I think it goes both ways, actually. And I know that's a hard one to wrap your head around, but there's a lot of talk in our community, spiritual community, about the splitting of the earths.
Right.
And that one version of Earth will actually continue and probably go down, and there's another version of Earth where it ascends. And there's the
So it'd
idea
be
of,
like a splitting of a timeline.
yeah, that's probably an easier way to sort of conceptually get it. I think that's a little more complex than that, or I
Mm-hmm.
think it's quite exactly that's the mechanism. But for conversational speak, I think that's a good way to say it. Yeah, the splitting of the timelines where one version of Earth ascends and goes to this
Mm-hmm.
uh, higher vibrational field of doing things, and the other Earth goes to sort of descends again and goes and repeats that cycle.
Mm. Okay, interesting. So it's kind of like our timeline. We went in during Lemurian times. We went down first, and so we
Mhm.
lost contact with ETs, and um, maybe it's just like they were like, well, they went down and they don't have the capabilities or understanding, or it wouldn't be helpful for us to reconnect with them. So we're just going to wait till, or maybe play behind the scenes until they're ready, and then kind of come back into the forefront.
Yeah. So what this conference that we do in Mount Shasta every year, Lemurian Life Expo. One of the reasons we do it in Mount Shasta is there's a whole sort of lore and talk about the ancient Lemurian city of Telos, which is
Mm-hmm.
a crystalline city inside the mountain of Mount Shasta. And I've talked through channeling to the head priest of that city. He goes by Adama, and the storyline that he shared is that during the fall of Lemuria, a group of Lemurians sort of got spiritual intuition or messaging that the fall's coming. You guys better, take refuge, get ready for this. And a big group of them went into the lava tubes of Mount Shasta. At the time, it was, I don't know if it was still active. Now it's not. But at the time, there were the tubes that you can still find to this day. And they went into the tunnels, took refuge from the deluge. And over, I don't know, maybe hundreds of years or decades, they continued their spiritual evolution, while on the surface things were getting pretty blasted. So, and it was during those spiritual practices that they kept doing to connect with the planet, God, all that there is. They continued on their evolution and sort of pulled away from this version of Earth that we're familiar with. So in a sense, they were part of that splitting of the timelines.
Mm-hmm.
And on their timeline, they live in this crystalline city. It's Mount Shasta is this beautiful inner Earth civilization, the Telosian civilization. Their inner Earth city has its own light sources and food sources and everything else, and they are connected with other inner Earth cities. Agartha, you may have heard of the stories of Admiral Byrd in Antarctica going and seeing these lush worlds. They're sort of connected through, my understanding is sort of connected through wormholes in a sense to these other portions of higher vibratory areas on the planet that that are so-called gateways to these civilizations. So there's been many stories of people being in our timeline being taken into Telos.
Would that be the same thing as like portals?
Yeah. So they're because in their timeline and ours, these places are so vibratorily high in their frequency, and when you go to Shasta, you can feel it. I mean, I don't feel much stuff, but when I'm there, I'm just like, wow, the forest is so prestige. A lot of water comes from Shasta. I think Crystal Geyser water comes from Mount Shasta. It's one of the most prestige places on the planet, and so the veil is thin there between these worlds. A lot of people misconceive and they think, well, if I go dig a hole into Mount Shasta, I'm going to find this. Like that's
Right. They
not.
think of it like in a physical way.
Yeah, and it's not quite how it works. But there are portals all around Shasta where you just being in the energy, you can feel something different. And and it is often people have gone to the mountain to meditate or do some sort of spiritual practice. And one of these Telosian people might show up and say, "Hey, you want to come in and visit?" And I think that's mostly, through, meditative practices or in dreams and these types of things. I think physically, I'm sure there have been physical encounters. People have gone missing for days and they come back and they say, "I was in Telos." But I think it's more of a etherical, something that we can connect. And as the veil thins, as we are evolving and going into this higher state of consciousness on our planet, in our physical realm, these worlds are starting to connect. So already in Telos, they talk about it's already a sort of a spaceport. So ETs are coming in and out. And that's why there's a lot of UFO activity around Shasta. And you see craft going into the mountain. Physically, people see these all the time. The lights are quite active at night around Shasta as well. And that's because it's, again, they are on that other timeline where they never fell, and they're just sort of waiting for humanity, the surface, our version of humanity, to catch up so we can then.
So it's like as we ascend to 5D, we merge back with that timeline.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Brandy's we've talked to her grandmother on the other side, and she's talked to when we are asking about dimensions and then we're asking about timelines, it's like they don't have a distinction between the two, which is kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, but you're kind of alluding to they're on a different timeline, but it's like we connect with them different dimensionally. But that also is resolving the timeline. So it's still hard for me to understand, but I think I see something there.
Yeah, there's two sort of within sort of my lore, we'll call it my lore, my worldview. There's two sort of ideas that get confused quite a bit. So there's density and dimensions. Mm-hmm. And density is, like I said, a measurement of consciousness. So if you think of rocks, so rocks would be termed a first density consciousness, where they're inanimate, they don't move, they're still in a sense alive, they still have God's creation, but their sense of time and space and how we experience things is vastly different. A rock may take hundreds of thousands of millions of years to develop and turn and have something. Then the next level would be second density consciousness, which would be plants and animals together. Their life, they have a
collective life conscious.
Yeah, there's a collective consciousness to them. There's a lifespan that ends and that's much longer than or much shorter than the rock consciousness. And then us humans are third density. Now, all of these are moving up, though, in density. So imagine rocks moving to second density, having an idea of a beginning and an end, and a consciousness that can, like how we communicate with animals now, rocks will, and people are having conversations with crystals and, their collections, and they're like, oh, this one has this kind of personality, and even rocks having personalities. Imagine that. But that's sort of this idea that everything in creation is moving up on the planet, up in these levels. Humans then moving into from. You remember we used to say I used to say when I was little, you get that follow your gut, get that gut feeling and follow your gut. We don't say that anymore. We say follow your heart. And there's that gut thing. What happened to the gut thing? The gut thing was the old operating system of where humanity was at. Now we're moving, just in the past 20 years or so, we've moved into the heart. And now it's all about following the heart. And the heart is guiding us to where we need to go. The gut is more of an instinctual fight or flight survival thing, because the gut knew how to survive. That was the operating system of the human, of the old. The new operating system of the human is in the heart. And I think if you talk to your friend's grandmother, These are more along the lines of how they are perceiving reality is through the density levels of consciousness. So use those sort of marker points, because the dimension is another sort of measurement, but that's a very mental thing that I think behind the veil. I think that's more. These are more human mathematical constructs that we use.
Right, because it's like in reality, everything is kind of an illusion. Like we do operate with like psychic abilities to some degree. Like it's like it's there. We do have like a spirit inside of us. It's just about how aware and how much we're utilizing these things. But it's like it's not like it's this separation, this wall that we like upgrade to or something. I mean,
exactly. Yeah. And my understanding is within these different density levels of consciousness, we have dimensions. So like everybody talks about the fifth dimension. We're going to the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is a fourth density concept. So once we're in the heart, and the level of consciousness is where we're moving, we're finding that time is more malleable than we originally thought. We're having discoveries like time crystals. We're understanding that now through shamanic practices that we can go back to old versions of ourselves, and we can do healing work through our imagination and through ceremonial things. And we can then do that work that fixes that timeline in a sense then, and it affects how we manage and feel today. So we're finding that time is more malleable, and we're dimensional. That's a dimensional construct, is time.
What are time crystals?
Time crystals, it's a these are, in Star Trek they use there's a whole they sort of took that basic idea and they did a whole different sort of spin-off on it. But in reality, time crystals it's a new state of matter, actually, where they can program crystals. I'm going to butcher this, but there's lots of, if you just Google time crystals, you'll find a lot of scientific studies. There's different ways that different universities around the world came to make them, some from gases, they sort of made them in different ways, but the same concept is they don't function in a linear sense. They kind of, the way the molecular structure works is it's literally in itself, I think, going back in time to program itself. And again, I don't have the best scientific explanation of it. Do a little research. They are actual new discoveries that came out about 8 years ago or so that break physics. They're sort of live in the quantum world. They can be programmed to be in a series, kind of like quantum computing in a sense, where it works.
Yeah, that's where my mind went, like quantum computers.
Yeah, it's in a similar vein, but it's an actual physical structure that break the linear sense of movement and go into states of probability to then create molecular outcomes, something like that.
Like Schrodinger's cat kind of thing.
It is, but with the physical, with the actual physical, object, as opposed to our ideas and concepts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Super interesting. I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah. But awesome. I think these are discoveries, and the reason we're coming to these discoveries and even this idea of ETs and why we're having more lights in the sky of late is we're breaking the paradigm of the fixated. There's this linear sense of time moving in this way. Our whole idea of ETs is now shifting, where we're like, well, maybe they're us from the future. They're not just, which is, I think it's valid. I think it's the whole bag. It's not one or the other, but there's the conversation is moving in a direction where people are getting out of their standardized, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now we can go
Right.
A to Z and back to F in one conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Super, super interesting for sure. Um, yeah. So what I've heard some different things like about open contact that it might happen this year, maybe 2030, maybe long in the future.
Mhm.
What do you have an idea?
Well, again, everything that I've gotten from my discussions with ETs is time is not fixed. There are
Mm-hmm.
timelines and there's a
Right.
flexibility. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say on some timelines, yes, we might get
What's the highest probability timeline?
highest. There you go. I would say maybe like 2030 is a good marker point. That seems to be where a lot of other predictions are sort of coming to that. Yeah, I think what Ray Kurzweil and his singularity probability 2030. I think that's where a lot of things kind of converge. Um, and but ultimately, I think we shouldn't wait for
Right.
that that timeline per se. I think we all have the ability to make contact now, and and to with all of the the rest of the world and the government stuff and all of the upheaval that we're seeing. As I alluded to before, it's this we're pulling off the Band-Aid and we're letting humanity go through its natural evolution to a certain extent. I mean, so much of it has been subdued and secrets being kept and humanity oppressed from its natural evolution. So it really depends on how all that plays out, and we're seeing a lot come to the surface now. So we're looking at these old wounds and the humanity and how we process all that, collective humanity. So the sooner we can process and get through that, the sooner we have contact.
Yeah, I love how you keep answering my questions and my bullet points before I ask them. That's great.
Well, the thing is, yeah, it's the open contact really depends on humanity as a collective. It doesn't. There's not a set date, and it's up to us. How are we going to deal with our traumas and our wounds? How are we, as certain aspects of humanity right now are coming to the conclusion that we've been lied to and manipulated on many things. Some are handling it with, well, I want to know more, and some are, well, I want to just go back into the matrix and have my steak, right? Close my eyes.
Existentially troubling.
Yeah, and point the finger at those who are pulling the Band-Aid off. So it's this. It is a splitting of worlds in a sense, where it's hard to say how does it all. How does the different pressures that are happening? It's like like a storm. You have a
the different densities all together creating this massive.
They're hitting each other and creating a lot of chaos on the planet right now. So until that sort of plays out, until the storm settles, we're not. I'm pretty sure we're not going to get actual ET contacts. We might get some fake versions of it to sort of stoke the fire a bit. Did I get to another bullet point?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. You caught my expression.
Well, you go and then I'll.
No, that was great. Great. I mean, if you're going to hit it already, then, yeah, I think it's like, so what you're saying is basically like, they're not going to choose to have open contact till we're ready, basically what's healthiest for us. And so we have to do our own work. I was actually talking with a friend who's spiritual now, and we both grew up Christian, and we find it funny how the same thing we saw that Christians can fall into, that spiritual people can also fall into. So Christianity is like, we're waiting for Jesus to come back and save everything. So we're just kind of like sitting here like, Jesus, please come save us. And then spiritual people like, we're just sitting here waiting for the aliens to come save us. And so let's try not to fall into that and do our part to create a better earth, heaven on earth.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what it is there. I think Jesus, Christ consciousness, ETs, whatever label you put on it, it's right there, and it's there. We can call on its help at any time when we're in distress. We can call it. I think many Christians do. They call upon Jesus to help them through sticky situations, and they get the help that they need. So it's right there. It's always here to help us, and others who want to put the ET label on it. I have conversations with Ra, the Ra consciousness, and Ra says that we're right here. You just have to call upon us. But they're not going to fix our problems. We still have to they will help us and give us guidance to fix our problems, but they're not going to fix it, because that's going back into that ET lore history. That's happened in the past. And the ETs did that. We have the whole idea of Greek gods, and they the gods, and the same with the Anunnaki storyline, and you have different storylines that correlate. But and in my lore, where I have these conversations, they said, we did that at a point when humanity was going through different stages of its evolution. They came and helped, and then what happened was us humans, we became dependent on them. That we'll fix this or fix that or do that or whatever. I'll just call upon this entity.
We're just on ET welfare.
Yeah, we were on exactly. Humanity was on ET welfare, waiting for the handouts, and then the ETs themselves, being a little bit more highly evolved than us humans, we're like, this is not working. Like, the humans are not, they're just, it's the whole Jesus story of you either give someone a fish or you teach them how to fish. And so humans became dependent on the fish handouts. And then there was like, okay, well, the only way to fix this is we got to leave. So the ETs left. They left us to our own demise. And then what happened was those who had those ET connections became very bitter, and then became angry, and then basically we got abandonment issues. So collective humanity is still working through these abandonment issues where we had these beings, the Greek gods, that were here helping us, left so we could go through this evolutionary stage and figure out things on our own. But many of us became spiteful and angry, and all of the emotions that come along with that, with imagined parents leaving their kids. So there's a lot to work through, emotional things that collective humanity has to work through before we can reunionize with our ET families, because the last thing that they want is to create a codependency type environment that happened before. So they're very much waiting on the sidelines for humanity to get their act together until we can get to a place where we're equals. Obviously technologically, and in other means, they're way more advanced than us, but spiritually we have to be on equal footing, where humans understand that we have a seat at the table, the galactic table, and we have something to offer through all of our trials and tribulations of the human experience. And they also recognize that. They're like, you humans are awesome. You just haven't waken up to the fact that we are. And once we can get to that stage where we're like, yeah, we're awesome in some aspects when it comes to, the human experience, the spiritual journey, and other things. When it comes to technology, way more advanced. These guys have a lot more things that they can offer to us. So it's just catching up. So as we catch up, then the doors will open more and more. and the more we can stop idolizing and, like you said, waiting for the ETs to come and save us,
Mm-hmm.
the more we can get away from that and just focus on connection, heartfelt connection, and then those are that, same with Jesus, having Jesus in your heart, as opposed to like, Jesus, come save me. Jesus, help me, give me the power I need to overcome my struggles instead of coming and fixing them. There's a fine difference there. So when we can do that, we actually become closer to Jesus. We come closer to our ET brethren because they are, in a sense, the same as far as wanting us to evolve and grow on our own, as opposed to becoming codependent.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all that. And I know you and I both like to focus and keep, our focus on the positive, but, in reality, there's also the negative in the sense that there wasn't always, there's some ETs that are not so benevolent, and that, and you tell me if you believe this, that like they might have enslaved humanity, or, just led them in ways that it wasn't so great. And so that also takes us maturing to be ready to handle the knowledge of all of them, and have our discernment and who to partner with, and how to best move forward.
Exactly. Yeah, you said it. Discernment is key. And we're finding out, there's different storylines out there, different ufologists and speakers that want to bundle the whole ET thing into a nice, neat package that says all ETs are good, and everything bad is humans. And it's
and
funny.
Also the opposite. Some say they're all demons.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. They're all demons and humans are good. So, and we're finding an evolution I'm seeing through some of these more prolific figures in the communities are starting to change their tune a little bit, because it's not so black and white. Look at humans. Humans are we have a major spectrum of good, bad, ugly, beautiful, amazing. It's and when it comes to these different entities, we like to classify them as this race or that race and this thing, and this is good and that's bad, and it is what it is. And I think we all need to discern for ourselves what energy we're letting into our field, and discern if that's something that's going to be have a positive effect for us or a negative. And that's part of this journey that we're on with reconnecting to our ET families or extra dimensional families, is having this discernment. It's a muscle, and it needs training. And right now because we've collectively, I won't say everybody, but collectively, so many have even turned the muscle off, in the sense that it's atrophied. The belief systems of humanity is like, there are no ETs, there are no demons, ETs. Many even in the Christian communities have shut, other than Jesus, have shut everything off. And part of that was to as a protective agency, because we didn't a protective mechanism. We didn't have, the muscle has atrophied because we've literally shut the idea that anything else out there is can, like the idea of connecting with your grandmother, even that was frowned upon in the past.
Right.
It's demonic, it's evil. Any idea of looking into anything other than Jesus or other beliefs, that whatever our religious belief system that you subscribe to is false, it's evil, it's bad, or whatever. So our discernment muscle has been atrophied. And now we have to turn it back on, one, by saying, yeah, there's a whole galactic soup of energies that's there and right behind the veil. And now it's up to us to use that muscle and turn it back on and work it and figure out what is of the best for myself, my family, my community, and what is not. And I think that now I think we're going that direction with this. The Epstein files are opening a whole new perspective that a lot of people with the human trafficking and everything else are understanding. That going P. Diddy, Tucker Carlson talking about the spiritual war. We're understanding that there is more to reality than just what we see, and that these exercises, we'll call them, or not even exercises, these demonic practices are legit, and that people are doing this on a scale that people probably couldn't even fathom.
Like the child sacrifices and the blood and all that crazy stuff.
So, which was, again, that's part of this. The reason that stuff could exist for as long as it has is because there's been a collective turning off of our attention or understanding or even looking into
in the dark.
Yeah, it's hiding in the shadows. Mm-hmm. So as we expose and pull the veil away, we are seeing both sides. We're seeing the positive spiritual side of connecting in with the heart and making new connections with ETs, or what is call them higher, not higher dimensional, higher vibratory. Because at the end of the day, I always go back to Nikola Tesla's quote, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. And truly that's what we're dealing with. And that's a good way to sort of turn that muscle on that can sense these things, because everything is energy. And when you feel with your heart the frequency and the energy and the vibration of these different energies, then you can discern for yourself, okay, how does this feel? How does this, it may have an appearance, but appearances can be deceiving. So we as individuals have an extraordinary ability to tune in, literally as like a tuning fork, to tune in and call on other energies. And we can call on them, or if they show up in our field so-called randomly, which I don't think that ever happens, but it may appear to us that something randomly is showing up at us, we can tune into that and discern if it's not by appearance, but through making connection and asking and calling upon Jesus, Ra, the ETs, Arcturians, whoever, whatever your belief system is. Call upon whatever resonates with you to help you discern some energies that you already have a relationship with, because humanity needs help right now. We still have the training wheels. And we can ask, okay, is this new thing, say something new is showing up in your field, you can ask for help to discern whether that is something that's that you want to allow into your field or not.
Absolutely. That's great stuff. I mean, that's one of my key teachings about things I try to reinforce is the discernment and connection to spirit, and to strengthen that connection and Absolutely. Utilize it for our help and our evolution, for sure.
And the more we can do on the individual level, the small things like diet, and what you allow into your field. And before, I used to think this was all nonsense. I'm coming from an action video game field of making action movies and stuff like this. But I do now, especially now, looking at games and different things there. In the old days we say, oh, those video games are demonic, or this TV show is demonic, or whatever. And it's not that the TV show or the thing is evil. It's how does it affect your field? How does it affect when you watch it? What are you feeling? How are you interpreting that in your own language? because some of these really violent TV shows come with good messages that as an individual you can interpret them. But I think we become so desensitized through the mass amount of violence in our airwaves that we've lost the connection to the story, and we tend to have it playing in the background, and we don't understand the subtle frequencies that can be coming through these messaging devices, through social media and whatnot. So then our discernment levels just go way down. So So not that consuming this content is evil or bad, but it definitely desensitizes our discernment muscle. So whenever you do consume content, food, anything, whatever you consume in life, your environment, the friends you hang around, all of this stuff has an effect on your discernment muscle. And the more you bombard yourself with things that are overloading to that discernment muscle, that muscle is going to turn off. So that's why I'm in nature, so I can literally tune in to my environment and not get so overwhelmed with all of the desensitizing mechanisms that are in our day-to-day society. And I want to continue to tune that muscle as much as possible so I can call upon and have good discernment when I do call upon through the veil energies or entities to help me discern or help make these connections, contact, or have these conversations that and be in a good place where we can look at all the different angles instead of just saying, yeah, all ETs are good. Just go make a connection. Sure. And now you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. We're constantly bombarded every day by everything, social media and the news and negativity. And so we have to take up the mantle to use our free will to consciously choose what we're going to be exposed to and how we're going to utilize that energy and the information for its best possible outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially in these times.
Yeah. Good stuff. So earlier you alluded to, you didn't say it in these words, but maybe the government doing some fake invasion stuff. Yeah,
that's been in the cards. Dr. Stephen Greer, who has been a outspoken voice on that agenda of late. A little too much, in my opinion. I think he's overshooting the bow a little bit, but he's not wrong that there are many intelligence agencies. There's been whistleblowers over the years, and the fake alien invasion it's been in the cards for a long time. As a mechanism to make humanity stay in its fear and a state of control, as a control mechanism.
Right. Yeah, the government is trying to control the narrative and utilize this information of ETs being real and all this stuff to hack and use this for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen it's part, like the COVID playbook that has been exposed now, and many people are seeing that, it was a created event to control and keep people or get people to make certain decisions in their life choices for a specific agenda. So it's same idea. So the ET invasion, I think there's so many. There's been so much talk about it on the interwebs in the past few years that it's constantly evolving, and as humanity is waking up to that idea, the instigators of those programs are having to shuffle and move things around as well to see if they're going to play that card. So
right.
I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'd go back to what we were just talking about with that discernment, that what I do see, what we've had happening in the New York area, or not New York, what was it, New Jersey,
New Jersey.
having all those drones, and my understanding is it's a mixed bag. So some of them are, when we get actual real ET sightings, we're going to have probably some government. And again, when I say government, these are not like your people working at the DMV or your average.
It's not like the government's one entity that knows what's all going on. It's like specific.
Yeah, these are
organizations within.
You could almost say like breakaway groups within that are so behind paperwork and black budget projects and these types of things that aren't really government. They're more like cult aspects using government funded money, which we're exposing on one layer, the whole USAID thing that's being exposed. Like, it's kind of like that where there's aspects within government that are using taxpayer money without the taxpayers knowing it, to fund these projects that even Congress doesn't know about. And these are these black budget programs that that are being exposed. And yeah, there's agendas at play to keep the secrecy going, or I should say, to control the narrative around it all, so they can continue with their because basically it's all about funding. And when the siphoning off the taxpayer money is no longer, if that ever happens, then that's the well-being for a lot of the individuals that are individuals or groups that are propelling these narratives are going to lose their grip on humanity, and eventually they will. It's inevitable. When we talk about the frequency and vibration of things, that's just where everything is headed. But until then, they're going to continue to fight and hang on to what power they have, and manipulate and control and make as many put out there as many narratives as possible for them to be able to do that. So just that, when you understand that greater picture, then you can discern much easier. You can discern much easier for yourself which narrative to buy into or not. And from my experience in research, 99% of the narratives out there are behind them is some sort of control mechanism. So I would, not that all of it is, there's aspects that are true, and aspects have to be true in order to get people on board. So are they all drones? Or are they all ETs? I would say it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well from Brandy's grandma, that, there's government drones going on, but then there's actual ETs as well. So yeah, mixed bag.
Yeah, and I think the ETs they're either way, no matter what, at this point in time with collective evolution, I think it's a net positive for humanity, just to contemplate the idea that we're not alone, that there are other entities or beings from other civilizations or from other realms. We don't know the details at that level, what's showing up here. The best thing is just to have an open mind and open heart, and discernment. So when the phenomenon gets closer, which for some people it is, then at that level is when we really start to need to discern. When you have lights in the sky that are just floating there, okay, that's not doing anything. But I think, but to have awareness that yes, there are agendas at play to have these lights in the sky at some point start attacking humans. And when you know that those agendas are at play, then you can probably say, okay, if it's attacking humans, it's probably one of ours. Because as I stated earlier, the goal of most of the ETs that I've come into contact with is their goal is to have peaceful contact, to uplift humanity and to meet us at the table as equals and not to have a hierarchy.
Right. Well, they've been here been around for so long. And if they're so advanced, then number one, they could have attacked us a lot earlier. Number two, they can probably do it in a way where, like, is violence even like necessary? They could just like beam us up or something and, do it in a lot easier, simple way than our idea of violence and taking over.
And that's what we're having now. I mean, with this parasitical energy that exists through our day-to-day, our social medias and these types of things. There are other ways to get humans and siphon our energy. They don't have, spaceships come down and enslave us through putting us into concentration camps or whatever. There's other ways of doing it that's why we need our discernment, so we can make sure that it doesn't happen in other ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, what do you think that ETs have to teach us? What do we have to teach them? Because you were talking about earlier, like the human experience. And I think in some ways, because we're in this lower density, we've had to experience some extreme things on the earth that then helps us see the light even more. So the extreme darkness helps us appreciate the darkness. And so it's like, if you experience hard things, then you can actually have more empathy and more emotional intelligence in some ways. And so it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, like, they're ahead of us in some ways. But maybe we have the capability to have even more empathy than they have because we've experienced such low density.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's it. I think it comes down to empathy and what I hear a lot is forgiveness. That one of the things that humanity has to teach a lot of the other civilizations is our ability to forgive. And this goes back to, the Christ consciousness, Christ Jesus himself. I think those core teachings are really basic human attributes that we will be able to take into other civilizations in the future and show, we're still in the process of learning that ourselves. But I think this is why the Christ consciousness is so strong on the planet, even to this day, and has been, for several thousand years. But at this point now, more than ever, is this empathy and ability to forgive, because as we're pulling that Band-Aid off and we're realizing all of the atrocities that have been going on have been happening to humanity and the manipulations and everything else, really the only way to get through this at the end of the day, and we're just in the beginning stages. So many people have no idea how deep the manipulation and the crimes against humanity have gone on for so long. And it's going to take collective humanity to find forgiveness for the others that have done this to us. Done it to us in a way, I don't want to play victim here, because this is where okay, going back to what do they have to offer us? They have to offer us the perspective that this was part of the experiment. This was part of the human experience, was for us, that we all volunteered. And going back to Dolores Cannon's work at the beginning you mentioned, she talks about the different waves of volunteers that have come here to help humanity through this. And I think all of us, every person who's in the human experience at some level volunteered to come here to have this experience, to understand at a deeper level through our incarnation here that what this idea of empathy, forgiveness, compassion is another big one. Having compassion for another, and that could be another human being, another animal, another someone from another race, and then forgiveness for what that person or those group of people have done, the evils that they've done, and how do we process that? That's yet to come. But the storylines they're making their way through. The Epstein stuff, the sacrificial stuff, the children trafficking. These are deep, really deep stories that most people will just tune out because they don't. It's too much. It's too much to think about. I remember when I first got exposed to it, 2014, those storylines started to make their way through the interwebs, and I tuned in, and I was like, "That's impossible!" But the evidence is so overwhelming. You can't, as any critical thinker or logical mind, you look at the evidence, you're like, "Okay, well, this must be going on." And then then you have to really think about, okay, wow, if this stuff is really happening, how is humanity going to deal with this? And we're just in the beginning stages of it. But I think when we get through it, humanity overall will have some tools in our toolkit that we'll be able to lend to our galactic families and say, hey, yeah, this is how we're going to have to deal with it. This is how we dealt with it here on humanity at whatever year it happens, between now and 30, I don't know, hopefully. And then again, yeah, they're going to, everybody's taking notes.
Yeah. And it seems like Trump said he's going to release a bunch of like classified files. He's like, the public needs to know.
Yeah, he has said that. I think a lot of people are frustrated right now because that hasn't come to light.
Right. He says a lot of things.
Yeah. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. And a lot of people are like, just release the files. And I think it's easier said than done, because the ramifications of what are eventually they will make their way to, collective humanity will see it. But look what's happening without that even coming out. With just the USAID stuff, we're having riots in the streets. People are bombing Teslas right now. Cars are being destroyed and things like that because of this. The Band-Aids getting pulled off pretty fast here. So it's going to be a process. I would say people are, folks probably like you and me, we want this information out yesterday kind of thing. But and I think a lot of people are ready for it. But again, it's going to be a big one for humanity. So careful what you ask for, because when it all comes out, it's going to be a lot. And and how people handle it is really going to, on a collective scale, it's going to be the bigger. I think not the information itself, but how do people handle it?
Right. Yeah. It seems like, and people talked about before, Trump and Elon, RFK Jr., they're making waves, they're changing things up. And I think that that's going to help with awakening. But, especially Trump and Elon have their own issues, and they're also going to get exposed for their things.
Yeah. I mean, even RFK, he's on the flight logs. He's been on the Lolita Express 2 times, I think. And so there's some answering to be done there. So it's interesting. He's addressed it in the past, but I think as more discoveries happen, it's going to, everybody's going to have to come to the table, and we all collectively, then we're all going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. So going back to the open contact thing, I know like part of your series, you talked about like hybridization and alien abduction, and some women talked about having these like phantom pregnancies and feeling like that. There might have been some hybridization things going on. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is overwhelming. We're not at this stage yet where there's little hybrid babies running around here on Earth, but there are a lot of people who still to this day claim that they are having interactions with their children on ships or in dream time. So, I don't. I think there's different levels to it, but again, it's sort of these alternate universe type things that are happening on different timelines, and if it's for me, if it's a benefit to the person who's having those experiences or memories, if it's to the person's benefit, then I always encourage to go ahead and go with it. If you're feeling more connection and more unity from those experiences, then by all means, lean into that. If it's causing turmoil and separation and anxiety and these types of things, then maybe that's something you can step away from and not go into those storylines so much. So I think it's really individually based. And it's a big topic, I think, for the collective humanity right now. There's a lot of belief systems out there that would, as we talked about before, the demonization of the alien contact. So I think a lot of people immediately, their knee-jerk reaction is, those are demons. They're taking you at night. They're doing bad things to you. It's evil. However, you talk to the individual that's having that experience, and that's not necessarily the case. So I would say it's an individualized phenomenon at this point. And for collective humanity to put a specific label on it we're not there yet. I think allow it to play out. And like everything out there, nothing is black and white. It's always gray. And it really depends on the individual and what their takeaway is from that experience. So is it happening? I believe it is. What are the bigger ramifications? I don't think we know.
Do you think that ETs might use the hybrids to make open contact first, to be like, hey, they're part of you, they're part of us, and they're more like us than the ETs, and so we can familiarize ourselves with them as like a step A to then make open contact with them?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and that's this whole idea and concept around the Yael civilization, which is a group that comes through a lot through different channelers. They're one of many hybrid races, so-called hybrid races. And this is where things get wonky with time and everything else, but they're supposedly our children, even though it's a whole civilization that's been going on for thousands of years. So when you get out of the constructs of time, then so in a sense, they're future humans, and they the Phoenix Lights is supposedly a Yael event, the craft that came in 1997 over Phoenix. So many people saw. So, but yeah, a lot of Yael contact channelings that have come through the Yael, they often say that it's a high probability that they will be the first contact race. It's kind of a tie between them and the Palladians, who are also our ancestors, but more in the past, sort of thing. So it's said that we are sort of a hybrid version of the Palladians. Mm-hmm. So that's where these conversions, which you have the past idea, and this is where these stories are really fun to play with, is you have this past idea of, humanity was birthed out of the Pleiades, or the Palladians are our cousins in a sense, distant cousins in another, from the Pleiades star system. And the Yael are sort of future humans, where Greys hybridized humans and Greys and created this offshoot of themselves called the Yael, and they're thriving, and then they're gonna, because they look closer to us than many of the other civilizations, that they're at the forefront of being our first contact race. So there's different ideas thrown out there, but it seems like the consensus is whichever race that comes out to be the first contact race will have more human-like features than another race, just for comfortability. So we can all be like, oh,
right. Well, yeah, can't some ATs not really like our environment? They're not made for that, so they can't really stay here.
Yeah. And there's different types. We have, sort of like the Arcturian type here that are blue, and then we have the gray type, right? That more.
He's showing a bunch of figurines of these. He's just got them ready. That's awesome.
They're right here by my side watching here, but the depending on the looks, I think people are going to, some people have had experiences with connecting with these different beings, are already acclimated, but collective humanity, I think, if you get a big praying mantis looking being
right
showing up, then because of all of our movies and everything else, we're going to automatically default and say that thing is evil and it's out to eat us.
Have you seen a Resident Alien? That show?
Resident Alien? Oh, no.
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, no, it's good, but there's a mantis and he's pretty scary at the end of the.
Oh, okay.
The last
I've had encounters with mantis beings. That's the only race that I've actually have memories of.
Oh, wow.
Of encounter. And though they look scary, so I think they don't look scary, but a lot of people think they do. Their energy, and again, this is what I felt into, right? As a feeling, they feel more. They feel very angelic. That's what for me. It just felt like, and I remember asking them. I was like, why do you guys feel so unconditional loving and open and warm, and like what? And then they told me, and then I talked to some other experiencers after that's a lot of how they show up for a lot of people, is they sort of show up as angels, and then they, in a sense, disguise themselves because their looks can be so intimidating, or people get scared from their looks. So they, until the time is right. For me, they showed up for me first, and I wasn't intimidated. So then they came full. They showed their full selves, or this one being showed its full self, and then and I asked why me, and they're like, "Well, you weren't afraid." Typically, we come forward, and it showed up to me in a meditation. It literally sort of slowly. I saw the back of its head first, and it slowly turned around. Instead of me getting scared and in the meditation and feeling, in a sense, running, even though it was a meditation. I was fascinated, and I went. I wanted to look closer into it like that, and then a week later, it showed up in its full form.
That's awesome,
and sort of gave me some had a very interesting telepathic communication with it. It was one of those highlights of my life, I guess, to this day.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine. That's amazing. So kind of on that line, when, if they establish open contact and what do you think will happen? Do you think that they're going to teach us like telepathy and like how to travel the galaxy, or what do you think that'll do with like governments or?
I think there's a lot to learn. I think yes, because it's twofold. So there's a spiritual component and a technological component. One of the reasons we have the technology we have on Earth right now is because we don't have the spiritual maturity to handle anything more. There's always this talk of free energy, and one of the military's excuses for not allowing it on the planet is they talk about how this energy can be weaponized. And I think that there's some truth to that, but it's also kind of a cop-out, and it's finding that balance where humanity can have the spiritual responsibility to handle a lot of these technologies, not weaponize things so we blow ourselves up or use them to hurt others. So I think there's going to.
Yeah, I've heard.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I've heard lots of different things. I don't know the accuracy, but that we have healthier or we have technology to solve problems that we have, and it's just about it. We're not gonna be able to profit off of that, the government, and so they just discredit or do whatever to suppress these things.
Yeah, I've seen technologies that could revolutionize our planet in ways that we would basically break the current paradigm of dependency on fossil fuels and dependency on a lot of our systems that we have. I created a TV show back in 2010 that introduced a lot of these technologies to the forefront. Not so surprising, it was shut down at the top. Everybody on the lower level was like, "This is amazing! This is going to be the coolest thing ever." But when we look at our television and who's funding the television, Discovery's funded by General Electric, and I'm sorry, is Discovery Shell Oil is the parent company of Discovery Channel, which was one of the groups interested in the show. Then you have Sci-Fi and NBC Universal, that's owned by their parent company is GE, General Electric. So they were also interested in the show on the lower level, but once it got to the top, it got shut down. So we have a paradigm of consuming and using energy on this planet that will drastically change once open contact is made. And that is one of the core reasons I think many of the media and these groups are keeping the ET phenomenon a secret, is because they know that once humans realize, and as we are, that we're not alone, and then we start questioning, okay, how do these craft get from here to there? And then we start understanding that there's alternate physics that humanity
upset the power.
Yeah.
Upsets
the power structures. So first and foremost, before the ETs even land, we're gonna already start to, as we are now, start to enter into a new energy paradigm where we have access to energy, not to decentralized energy, not centralized energy in the sense where it's being metered and there's a constant sucking of human energy to require that to get that energy. The trade-off is there's a trade-off at this point, but we'll get to that point. And then once, so that's just one of the things that we don't even need the ETs to tell us. That'll just happen. But I think what will come with the interactions is this deeper, as my interactions with my show already, is a deeper understanding of human energy, discernment, as we were talking before, spiritual practices, connectivity to the land, to the earth, to see how we are harming our planet or harming each other in ways that we don't recognize now because that veil is so thick. So the manipulation is so thick. So once we get these spiritual understandings and practices, then we revolutionize how we do things on this planet. And it's hard to understand now, but when you see the correlation between spiritual maturity and energy consumption and energy production, they go hand to hand. And once we get over that hurdle, really it ushers in a golden age into humanity that we haven't seen on the planet for a long, long time.
Right. Yeah. Actually, a couple episodes ago, I was talking to this guy who was one of the founders of Airbnb, and he was talking about this grand vision they had for like connecting people to families and this idea of home and comfortability and safety and um, just community basically.
Community.
But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, but it became, very business and very money. And, it's about, you're in this fear mentality, and it's get more and more and more and more. And eventually he dropped out of that, and now he's doing his own thing. But yeah, see how, uh, so often we just, the physical, the Western dreams just get more and more and more, but we think that's going to make us happy. That's going to bring fulfillment, but it doesn't. And it just keeps feeding this empty hole. And we're caring more about ourselves and not the collective. And we're hurting each other. We're just taking from each other.
Absolutely. I think that's why the spiritual component is so important. I used to think when I first got into the whole ET thing and I produced the Citizen hearing back in 2013, I thought, well, if the whole world knew about ETs, like that would solve all our problems. Like just this change in worldview that ETs are there. And then I realized through doing the show, Interview with Ed in 2014 and starting on that path, that it's not about the technology. It's not, free energy and these things are great, but without that spiritual maturity, you can't. It's just going to end up in this, like you talked about the Airbnb.
The system is going to be the same.
It's just going to hijack and take it the same direction. Mm-hmm. So, collective humanity needs a. Well, I don't want to say need, but for us to advance, to have these technologies, we need a spiritual maturity, a new way of understanding and seeing the world collectively. So, because if it's not collective, then certain aspects will get hijacked and pulled into this, like your Airbnb guy pulled into a materialistic world that is only focused on those aspects. And we've seen this time and time again where these ideas and concepts and things that could really revolutionize and change the world get hijacked and pulled into a specific direction. So it's not like which comes first, the chicken or the egg. It's both at the same time. They need development, and they need they need evolution on both sides for them to coexist in a healthy relationship that will take us to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the only thing I had notes wise besides that was you mentioned our Antarctica. I've heard some things about with the shifting of the poles and exposing like maybe pyramids and some early ancient history things going on there. And I don't know if you knew if there's any updates or what's going on with that.
There's some interesting videos coming out. I don't know how real they are, but they're for sure. We've seen already through Google Maps and stuff some structures in Antarctica. People are saying that these are pyramids. The ETs that I've been interviewing on my show have talked about Antarctica a lot, and there's when you look at the secrecy behind it, the no-fly zones, the Old Testaments from and records from Admiral Byrd, and there's just a lot of mystery and unknown there. You have some whistleblowers came out that there was some advanced weaponry made by humans to shoot down ETs that are based there in Antarctica. So there's a lot of still mysteries to be uncovered, and I think as we move forward, we'll see more, and it's definitely a hot spot for these types of conversations.
Yeah, good stuff. And there's also like I've heard stuff about CERN and like a fourth state of water, and also like plasma related with energy. I don't know, it's just interesting stuff. They're all like little tidbits.
Yeah, and it's all connected, and I think we're the more, and this is where it's correlated and connected to the human spiritual experience. the more we evolve in our lessening of our judgments and we're the more we're open to different points of view and understandings, individually and collectively.
Yeah, more we
The,
like detach from our current way we understand and are comfortable with the world, the more we can open up to these alternate, the
yeah,
reality of things.
exactly. And technologies will make themselves more available and more new things and new ideas, plasmas and fourth states of matter of or I'm sorry, different states of matter with water, and yeah, it's all going to come to the surface, but we have to be open to it. We have to have an open mind, an open heart to receive it, and that's what's happening. I think collective humanity, they're just the disclosures are happening so rapidly and so fast now that we're getting bombarded, and we're
Right.
even if you're closed off, eventually that you're going to have to just sort of like, okay, the world is not what I thought it was. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's so important for, people like you to have open communities for people to discuss these things and support each other. And, with my work as a life coach to help people who have, awakenings or are really interested in individually and collectively growing and bringing in the 5D or bringing heaven on earth.
Absolutely, that's it. Yeah, and thank you for having these conversations.
Yeah, thank you. Super fascinating, really interesting, and great to focus both on everything going on and the past, but also our individual growth and what that looks like and what that means and how we can continue to do that.
Absolutely, the more we can do it individually, the more of an impact it'll have on the collective. So it's really up to us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll make sure I have your info in the show notes for people to connect with you or your community if they'd like.
Please, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Kendall. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.